A long time ago, I wanted to create a character who would be able to do absolutely everything, so that all his skills were 20 units and that all his limbs were replaced with improved cybernetic ones. And finally, this idea became a reality. I want to present you my 100 days of survival as an ideal cyborg. The first thing after start, I noticed the area as a strange animal that emitted a strange glow and gas around it. But for now, I was afraid to approach it, so I will pretend that everything is fine. Well, of course, having chosen a good place for the base, I began the construction of my initial house. In general, it was not difficult for my colonist, because all his skills, as well as improved limbs, allowed him to do the work as if it was done by 5 colonists. And when the walls of my house were built and the ceiling was ready, I relaxed a little and began to think about how to develop further. Actually, I have several options on how to make money and generally provide a safe and security life for my cyber. But for now, I will save that information for later. I noticed that the strange animals that I talked about earlier did not generally pose a threat to the environment, but the problem was that while flying around the map, it grew strange red trees behind it, which had eyes instead of fruits. And in fact, also, I didn't know how scary everything was, and whether it was scary at all. I still decided to get rid of such a neighbor, because as they say, we fear what we don't understand, and it's better to be safe and not take risk once again. Meanwhile, our home was slowly becoming more and more beautiful and comfortable. In fact, at the moment, this is probably the most important detail that will help me maintain the mental health of my colonies at a sufficient level and will not give him a chance to fall into a mental breakdown. The gods took pity on me and sent a meteor shower with various minerals as a gift, which I will certainly use in the future. Well, of course, the main part of the defense of every colony should be a kill box. In my case, I did not come up with anything unusual. I made a simple direct kill box for fire traps. And in the process of construction, the first raid began. I was attacked by a raider armed with a club, but the fight did not last very long. Also, the raider was able to inflict some light damage on me. He was still very quickly and hard put to the ground. A huge armored crab roams my map. In general, he is quite peaceful and he does not plan to attack me, but I have plans to get him as a pet that will cut my enemies with his huge claws. After not too long, I managed to research batteries. This is the first and one of the main steps in development of my colony. After the batteries, of course, the solar panels should be researched, after which the refrigerator will be built. And then I plan to research hydroponics and various weapons. Sometimes fragments of various space debris and spaceships fell from the sky. Well, of course, I couldn't just leave them like that and not disassemble them into components that I will need very much for building various useful machines and other accessories. My colony was attacked by hungry lynx. In general, I was not really scared, but still, it was not the best idea to go after such a terrible predator with a bare hands. But at a critical moment, my mega sleuth came to my aid, sending the big cat to the other world with a powerful bite. Little by little, I started extracting resources located on the territory of my base and also marked the territory for future crops. First of all, I am interested in growing medicinal root and cotton plants. Growing food is not very urgent yet, because there is a small water on the territory of my base where I can calmly get the food for myself with the help of fishing. By the way, the refrigerator has already been built and connected to the network, which means that from this moment the main problem in the construction of a base have been completed. And now the main thing will be placed on the created resources, autonomy and independence from the environment and surrounding factors. And it will also be very important to focus on construction of a serious line of defense. But for now, this question remains open. Another raider attack. This time we are attacked again by only one weak enemy and he dies in the trap. I think we need to quickly dig several graves in advance, because I feel that in the future the attacks will become more numerous. I finally researched the art of melee weaponry and immediately set about forging a long sword. In the future we will also need to learn how to create at least some armor, because in close combat there is no place without it. And here, while the guys came to my map, we were once again attacked by raiders. This time there were two of them, and of course they met with slightly larger group of defenders than expected. Unfortunately, our guys lost the leader of the caravan, but they still helped us repel their raid, and I'm very grateful to them for that. And finally, my colonist is encased in light armor that does not bend his hand very much and does not greatly reduce his movement speed. In fact, it would be possible to wrap him in heavy armor and not worry about anything at all, but still, mobility will not hinder us. Especially if we consider that in case of close combat, no one will help him. Maybe only my pets, but that when I can train them, while there are some problems with it. I took on the task of keeping a friendly colonist on my base who is sick with paralytic apathesia in exchange for certain resources. In general, I don't see anything difficult in this, and the reward won't be too much for me for sure. While the guests were on my map, lightning suddenly struck and hit the chicken brought by my guests. For some reason it worsened my relation with their faction, but I did not ask any more questions and decided to just wait until they left. By the way, I decided to change the walls of my kill box from wooden to stone, so as not to be afraid of fires in the event that a conventional boomalop or something like that gets into the kill box. By the way, it's time to harvest the first crop of medicinal root and cotton. I really hope that as soon as possible I will switch to growing plants on a hydroponic farm and stop constantly worrying that my crops will die due to lightning strike or unexpected frost. I also decided to plant rice, cause I thought it would help me tame animals. But I want to say in advance, no, it didn't help. These animals do not want to be tamed either with meat or rice. The last hope is a hay. Maybe you know how to properly tame and train animals, just to write it in a comment. I started digging a new room for my hydroponic farm. In general, at the moment I don't have any resources or enough energy generating for such a thing, but I do it in advance so that I don't waste a lot of time later and just start growing plants right away. My colony was attacked by beetles from the Black Hive. But fortunately, as always, a friendly caravan was resting at my base, which as always took all the damage. Fortunately, no one was hurt this time, and plus I didn't have to risk the life and health of my only colonist. By the way, from time to time I took easy tasks from allied factions, like controlled weather changes for several days. In general, the reward for such events was not too bad, and some conventional sick folk did not cause me a big problem. Later, a rather interesting attack by raiders took place. Two fighters clad in armor and armored with rifles came from the side of the map where there were insectoids that I decided not to touch. And of course, the raiders began to attack the peaceful beetles that just live in their cave. And as a result, -2 raiders and the life and health of my colonist was saved again. Next, when the hydroponics room was dug, I began to clean the floor. This process is quite long and difficult, but it helped to save a huge amount of resources that would have gone to flooring. And by the way, I immediately installed several hydroponic tables for growing rice. In fact, I still didn't have enough energy, so I just turned them off very quickly until better times. It was getting quite cold outside, and I very quickly inserted heaters in the rooms and also thought about creating at least some kind of warm clothes on a sewing machine. I was attacked by 3 aggressive huge birds. 2 of them died in the kill box, but one managed to get inside the base, where my colonists met her in close combat. Well, after a short fight, the bird was light on the ground and my cyborg got away with a few scratches. By the way, for one of the tasks, I received a power shield that protects my colonists from all possible attacks with with long-range weapon, but against close combat it is powerless. Although in the case of my fighter, this is not a very big problem. By the way, my case with paralytic abasia went home, for which I received a near trainer, which I can profitably sell to some merchant. I have a problem. My pet started to ignore my ban on visiting my house. That is, he doesn't care at all that the house is outside the zone where he can move. Maybe you know what the problem is and how to solve it? Just write in the comment. Well, armored raiders landed on my map, and of course I understood that my kill box would not hold them, and I would become a good target for their weapons. Because of this, I very quickly built two turrets that in theory were supposed to take a certain amount of fire on themselves and help me. But it so happens that these raiders decided to visit the peaceful beetles in the cave and become another fodder for these animals that are simply protecting their home. In general, nothing interesting happened. I expanded my hydroponic farm a little and decided to start sowing a field with hay in order to tame and train animals in the future. Please like, comment and subscribe to my channel. Johny was with you. Goodbye.